Hello, everyone. Welcome to your final How To Tuesday of fall 2025. Today, we're going to talk about citing, which is a real passion point for me. I love citing my sources. I love seeing how other people have cited their sources. I think it's pretty fantastic. So I'm here to talk to you today about citations. Next. I lecture about citations in lots of different disciplines in my job as teaching and learning librarian here at Park. And so I decided to take the disciplinary lens of interior design because I thought that that would be fun for most of us. It's kind of funny to think about interior design as like, scholarship and publishing. So I don't know, I thought we could talk about color theory today in our examples. So the reason why we cite is somehow both the same and a little bit different for all of the disciplines. So the reasons why we cite are that it builds up your credibility, right? When you're able to defend the claims that you make, you look a lot more credible, a lot more trustworthy. People are a lot more likely to believe you, right? Instead of just saying, so, oh, I read this the other day. If you can say, I read this in this particular article by these authors who have these credentials, you look a lot more credible in what you're saying as well. Now, I like to give discipline-specific examples of, so, when you're in your career, here's an example of where you're going to need to cite your sources actually when you're doing your job. And for interior design, it's basically an example that I could think of was if you're saying we need to use birch or pine if you want to include natural elements in your furniture design, because those are the most sustainable forms of wood, then if a client asks you, how do you know that? How do you know that those are more sustainable than, oak or cherry? Yeah, you're gonna look not super credible if you can't back up that information and say, well, here are all of the other experts out there that say these particular types of wood are more sustainable than the others. My favorite example actually is criminal justice. I was talking to a criminal justice class a couple months ago, and I was giving kind of a lofty example of like, so imagine that you're in the courtroom and the judge asks you, like, what are you basing this argument on? And then one of the professor that I was teaching with came in and said, yes, and I also like to think of citations as the friends that you bring with you to like a parking lot fight. So if you're saying, if you're going to make an argument, you're going to make a claim, you're just saying, oh my gosh, it's just me. It's me who's arguing this, and that's it. I've got to fight here. I've got to defend myself. But it's not just you making that claim, right? Smith and Johnson 2010. You've got others, people, other experts out there who are also making that same claim as you. And so you're able to kind of point to them and bring them with you, and they're kind of backing you up in that fight. She said it in a much more concise way. But citations give you credibility is the bottom line here. So this is APA style. APA, so there's lots of different citation styles, but there's basically three main ones. And most students are most likely to be using APA for their discipline. The most number of disciplines and majors that we have here at Park use APA style. Other examples are MLA, which is what like English and journalism students will use, and Chicago style, which is what history and also kind of journalism, although we don't have journalism. Um, so there's Chicago, MLA, and APA. APA is the one that I'm going to talk about today because it's most frequently used here at Park. But your professor will tell you, if you need to be using a particular citation style. This is an example of the two ways that we cite our sources. So when we're writing a paper and we're mentioning a particular article or book or study, there's two pieces of information that I need to know when I'm reading your paper is one, who are the authors, and two, what is the year? Basically tell me only those two pieces of information so that I can look down at the bottom of your paper to the bibliography, the references page. This is where you're saying, so I used, 10 articles, 10 sources of information, sources of evidence in this paper, and here's where they all are listed out alphabetically. So all I really need to know from you in the actual text itself, who are the authors and what is the year of the publication that you're referring to? And then it's on me to go look at your references page. And if I want to find that article and read it, I can do that. A common thing that I see in terms of in-text citations is a lot of times people think that that they have to list out the title of the article. And that's honestly just a waste of space because scholarly articles the title can be like multiple lines long. And so all we need is the authors and the date. So this is also the most common question that I get is when do I need to cite and how do I know if I need to cite something or if I don't need to cite something? So if you're doing any of these three things, then you need to provide a citation, which again is going to look like last name, year. Summary and paraphrasing, those are essentially the same thing. I could probably combine those on this slide from here on out because essentially all that really means is if I'm taking knowledge that I learned from somewhere and then I'm spitting it back out in my own words and restating it, I'm summarizing it. That's effectively what you're doing. So paraphrasing is essentially the same thing as summarizing. I'm taking someone else's idea and I'm saying it in my own words. Quoting is something that you should do minimally. Maybe if you're writing like a college level paper, I would say don't ever do more than one quote per paragraph, and your quote shouldn't be more than 1 or 2 lines long. Paraphrasing and summarizing are preferable to quoting because it shows your professor that you're able to understand something and then re-articulate it in your own words. So when you quote, that's when you use an article's exact words. You literally copy paste what they said. So that we always need a citation. And this is actually not quite correct here because you need to have a page number. If you're in APA style and you're quoting something with quotation marks, you also need to put the page number that you found that quote on. So that's something else to note for APA style. Okay, we've got a small-ish crowd here, so I can go ahead and answer these for you. These are really good examples that I came up with of a blurry case where it's not super clear if you should cite or if you should not cite. So if the original text said, color psychology suggests that blue tones can create a calming atmosphere while yellow tends to energize and promote creativity. If I took that and I read it, and then I went and said in my paper, designers often use certain colors to influence mood, with some shades promoting relaxation and others sparkling energy. The question that you should be asking when you're deciding, okay, I've done the thing, do I need to cite it, is basically how close does your version look to the original? And what are you stating anything that you didn't already know, right? Did I learn something very specific from this original text? This is an example that is really smushy. I would say if it's smushy and you're not 100% sure if you should cite or not, go ahead and cite just to be safe. Here's another example. So if the original text says, color psychology suggests that blue tones can create a calming atmosphere while yellow will energize and promote creativity. If I took that, read it, and then said in my own words, experts note that blue shades are linked to calm feelings while yellow is associated with stimulation and creative thinking. This is an example of you should definitely cite. I don't think there's any gray area here. I think it's very specific, right? Yellow is associated with creative thinking and stimulation. That's not common knowledge. Like, no, I did not already know that. I don't think anyone would already know that. And it's also basically, if you compare the original to what I put, it's almost word for word. Like all I really changed were, instead of energize, I said stimulate, and promote creativity, I put creative thinking instead. So I very minimally changed the phrasing. And so this is definitely an example where you should cite. So this paragraph I wanted to articulate here because I see this a lot. If you've got a paragraph and you're using only one article to get all of your information for that paragraph, instead of putting a citation at the end of every sentence, if your citations are the exact same for everywhere that you would put it, then only in that situation would you actually don't have to put citations anywhere until the very end. So what this tells your reader, your professor, is okay, the citation here at the end covers everything in this paragraph. This whole paragraph falls under Smith 2024. That's where my student got all of their information was from this one article. So this only applies per paragraph. It basically resets when you start a new paragraph. So you're going to have to put basically every paragraph should have a citation. You're going to have to re-articulate your citations when you start over a new paragraph. And also, this only applies when you're using just one article for the entire paragraph. If I'm comparing two articles or if I'm talking about another article at the same time, I'm going to have to, each sentence, I'm going to have to say, you know, where I got each idea if it's from different articles. So this will only really work if you're just using one article for the whole paragraph. So now when it comes time to actually create your citations, and this is something that students, it can be very confusing, right? Citations, when you think back to that early example that I gave, there were like 10 different components of it. And, you know, one thing had to be italicized, and then we needed a period here, but a comma here. So creating citations by hand is really complicated, and it's not something that you really need to do if you're a student. If you're pulling like an academic scholarly journal article, if you found it on Pirate Search on the library's website, it'll create your citation for you. If you click right there on the quotation marks, that's kind of the universal symbol for here's your citation, we've created it for you. So if you click on that, when you're in Pirate Search and you're looking at your article, it'll pull up your citation right here. Like this is a properly formatted citation. One thing to note I can see is that it left off the DOI. The DOI is kind of like a URL and it goes at the very end. So that's something to be aware of. It might leave off the DOI, and you can find that in the record of the article if you scroll down on this page. But usually it will toggle automatically to APA style. So if you need to be using MLA or Chicago, then you'll need to switch which style it's going to generate. But it'll create it for you. And I don't see Pirate Search be wrong hardly ever when it comes to APA, at least. The only way that I've seen it be wrong is when it leaves off the DOI at the end. Everything else, like you can feel pretty confident that it will be correct if you're pulling the citation in this way from Pirate Search. Another place that you can pull those citations for, and I know a lot of students use Google Scholar. I'm a fan of Google Scholar too. So this is what it looks like when you've found some scholarly articles from Google Scholar this way. They've got that universal symbol, the quotation marks. So if you click right there under Cite, it's going to pull it up for you. And APA is the one that we would select. And I can also tell that they also left off the DOI here. So that must just be a weirdly common thing that happens. So this is how you can just pull a citation that's already been created. And these only work for those scholarly articles that you're looking for, right? In Pirate Search or in Google Scholar. We'll talk in a hot minute about how to get citations for websites and books and other types of resources. So using articles, this is basically, I'm taking the idea of, okay, here's what you have to cite and what you don't have to cite. And then there's another step. How do you use other people's information when you're writing a college level paper? There's a few things we can do. Summary, we've talked about that before, right? You read someone's article, you understand it, and then you say, okay, so here's what these people found. Here's what Smith 2024 are arguing. Synthesis is really cool. I love seeing synthesis when students can do it, is where you're kind of comparing multiple articles to each other, right? You're saying, well, Smith found this, but Johnson et al. Found this, and those are similar ideas, but they're different in a few ways. And so synthesis is where you're sort of placing two different articles kind of in comparison with each other. And analysis fits in pretty easily with the summary component. So this is what I see a lot of professors looking for in their student papers, is where a student can kind of summarize. So here are the main ideas from this article, And then they can also take that a step further and analyze it and say, so here's what this actually means, and here's some ways that I can apply those ideas, in other contexts. So these are examples here. The only thing that I think that you don't necessarily need to cite is analysis, because analysis by its very nature is your own thoughts, your own opinions about something. It came directly from my brain. Synthesis and summary is when you're talking about very specific ideas that other people have created, so you'll always need to cite those. So here's an example. Sentence number 1, natural light can improve mood and productivity by making rooms feel brighter and more open. That's summary, right? Park 2024 emphasizes the psychological benefits of daylight, while Smith et al. 2025 argue that well-designed artificial lighting can replicate many of those same effects. This one's going to be synthesis, right? Because there's 2 and I'm comparing them to each other. Together, these perspectives suggest that designers shouldn't think of artificial light as a replacement, but as a complement that works alongside daylight to maximize comfort and well-being. That's my analysis. That's me saying, okay, here's what I think both of these articles, here's what I think the big takeaway is, and here's my interpretation of it. So this is an example of how you can use your sources in different ways in your paper. So just a quick refresher, quick wrap up. Why do we cite? Because you look so much more credible when you can provide evidence for the claims that you're making. When do we cite? Anytime the idea wasn't yours. Where do we cite? Both in the text. Remember, all I need you to tell me is the author's names and the date, and then down at the bottom in the references section. So some resources here that we're going to briefly talk about is the Purdue OWL, the Park Library Citation Guide, and then Google, my personal favorite. So I've got them pulled up here. Purdue OWL is, if you Google Purdue OWL, it stands for Online Writing Lab, OWL. They've got guides for APA, MLA. They've also got one for Chicago, I know. So when I'm on the APA guide, I can browse down all of this. So right here in text citations, they're telling me this is where I'm going to get information about how to format the author and the year that you put up there in the text. And then all of the reference list options are where they're telling you how to format your citations down in the references list. So I would start with the basic and then browse. They'll give you examples. They'll talk you through lots of different scenarios, and you can sort of find which information is going to be the most helpful to you. So another place that you can look is at the Park University Library's website. If you just Google Park University Library, this is what'll pop up. If you go under guide, we have a guide, which is basically a website about different citation styles. So what we have essentially done on that guide is taken a lot of the information that you would find on the Purdue OWL, and we've just condensed it. So it's like, 1 or 2 pages of key information, and it provides you with examples to look through. Whereas the Purdue OWL has a lot more information for you to wade through. So if you want sort of the quick and dirty, here's in a nutshell what you need to know, then the Park Library's citation guide is going to be the most helpful for you. And Google. So if I Google like APA citation style, like help or examples, I really like to look at examples of correct citations and then make sure and compare the ones that I have and make sure that they're correct. So if you Google it, AI will tell you yes, but there's an actual website for the APA style. There's other universities, right? If a university, if it's .edu, we can trust that they know what they're talking about, and we can trust that that'll be helpful for you. Citation Machine's got some helpful like examples of how to format papers and certain references for that. Yes, I'm seeing lots of .edus, and that makes me happy and excited. So Google is Where I like to go when I feel like the Purdue Owl has too much information for me to wade through, or the library's website. I'm gonna stop sharing, and I'm also gonna stop recording in case we've got some questions.